Now, this might really come as a surprise to you, but this has been one of my most anticipated vehicles to get behind the wheel of for over a year now. I mean, I first saw this back in February 2020 at the Toronto International Auto Show, and here we are, finally, it's in my driveway, ready to go. I'm very excited about this because minivans have been making a resurgence here in North America for the past little while now, and something like this shows us that a minivan doesn't need to be a bottom of the barrel, cheap as can be, family mover. This takes it to another level, and we already liked the Pacifica. This is taking it just a little bit further. Now, this is a 2021 Chrysler Pacifica Pinnacle with the all-wheel drive. Here in Canada, you can get it either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive with the top-end trim. If you're in the States, though, you can only get it all-wheel drive. Very interesting. Usually we see that the other way around, where here in Canada, it only comes all-wheel drive for most vehicles, but in the States, that's how it comes. Now, the pre-facelift Chrysler Pacifica looked a lot like the Chrysler 200, had a very similar front end, small grille, and if you put those side by side, you could see the family resemblance. This now looks more like the Chrysler 300, which isn't a bad thing, but that vehicle is pretty old now in Chrysler's lineup, so it's interesting to see that they're taking a lot of the design cues from that vehicle and putting it now on to the front and back end of this, giving it a good look. I think it looks great, but I'm just curious to see what the future of Chrysler will hold now that this is in this position, and then you're buying essentially the Pacifica Classic under the new Grand Caravan badge up here in Canada, or the Voyager down in the States. We have full LED headlights up front, including LED fog lights, and then an LED light bar running across the back of the trunk. It's something that we're seeing a lot more now in the industry, having these full width light bars. Dodge was one of the first ones to really do it for modern vehicles, and now we're seeing a lot more from other manufacturers, so now the Chrysler Pacifica has that as well. The engineers at Chrysler said that it was paramount that the Pacifica retained its stow-and-go seating while getting all-wheel drive. The platform was designed to do it this way, and it still is an industry only, having the seats that completely fold in both second and third row into the floor, as well as now having all-wheel drive. Now, if you go with the hybrid version, the plug-in that we've tested before, you cannot get all-wheel drive, at least at this time. But as of filming this, you can have stow and go and have the full all-wheel drive experience, which is really what you want if you're buying this in a climate like ours where it does get pretty rough in the winter. You want to have something that isn't a crossover. You like the idea of a minivan, the functionality of this, and now you've got the safety and security that comes with all-wheel drive. Because as far as I'm concerned, even though this is not the first minivan to have all-wheel drive, and it's not the first Chrysler minivan to have all-wheel drive, it would take away from the functionality that makes this so unique if those stow-and-go seats didn't exist because of the all-wheel drive system. So I understand why Chrysler needed to make this happen, and it is finally here. We finally have it, and I think it's going to sell very well, both here in Canada and in the United States. Now, our Pinnacle is fully loaded, and typically when it comes to a Chrysler vehicle, you can get a different trim and different options, and even if you go with the top-end trim for something, it doesn't have all the options. You can still add things, making it much easier to configure the exact vehicle you want. But when it comes to this Pinnacle, it is pretty much completely loaded from the factory. The only options are the paint on the outside, as well as the tow package. We do have the towing package on this, allows you to tow up to 3,600 pounds with it, so it's the only thing you can have. Everything else is added onto this when you get the Pinnacle trim, which is great. And aside from some of the changes on the inside, which we'll talk about in a minute, essentially the only major changes to this vehicle, aside from the facelift, is a lot of the safety tech that was reserved for higher up trims now becomes standard on the Pacifica. And they've also added pedestrian automatic emergency braking across the board. So you get more safety tech, pricing and packaging has changed, you get more at the lower trims. Then this upper trim is pretty much close to what we had with the Pacifica several years ago, but now we've got all-wheel drive and a much fancier interior. So let's jump inside now. I want to show you what's changed in there and why I like it so much, and then we'll hit the road with the 2021 Chrysler Pacifica Pinnacle. When you go with the Pinnacle, you only get one interior choice. It is this caramel and black interior, nappa leather seating, and pretty much the rest of the interior is leather wrapped, which is very nice. We've got the leather dashboard all in black. Like, it gives it a nice contrast. So if you don't like color on your inside, you're out of luck. And a big change for the front passenger space is the 10.1-inch Uconnect 5 infotainment system. This is the first time we're experiencing Uconnect 5, and I have to say it works very well. There's some new features there, including faster animations, a completely new user interface, updated maps using TomTom, as well as wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with Amazon's Alexa built in. I don't use Alexa, so I can't test it, but the features are there. You have different user profiles, Wi-Fi with 4G LTE, and you can have 2 simultaneous telephones connected via Bluetooth. So if you are a busy person, you've got 2 phones, maybe one for work or one for home, and whatever it may be, you can have them both connected so you can take phone calls from either one as you're driving along. The other major change people will notice up front is this center console. Chrysler is calling it their Ultra console instead of the open space that we saw before. Everything's sort of built in, much more SUV-like in the sense that you've got the space here that's being used by something. We have a wireless phone charger, space to be able to put your change, whatever it may be, cup holders built in, USB ports, and USB-C on this, which Chrysler says is an industry first for this segment to have USB-C on a minivan. But it works out well. I like it. There isn't that open space. So if you did like that before with the Pacifica, now you've got this instead. A major feature addition to this vehicle is what's called a FamCam. There's a camera in the top of the headliner for the rear seat area, and the driver or front passenger can keep an eye on any kids in the back seat with that overhead camera, and you can even zoom in on a specific seat. Now, this would have been great for me about 6 years ago when I had an infant. My kid is pretty old now. She's 7 years old, so it really doesn't make any difference for me. But when I had a rear-facing car seat, it would have been fantastic just to be able to have a camera, take a look, make sure my kid is asleep, make sure everything's fine with her. This is great. And why I said before when we drove the Pacifica, this is really a family-oriented vehicle, and I got some backlash about it. The people of any sort of situation can buy a Pacifica and enjoy it, and it's true, you can use it for anything with that FamCam. If you got stuff in the back that you want to make sure hasn't moved around, it's doable. The point is, you've got the camera there, it adds functionality, and it is usable on a daily basis. There's a few other things to note that have been changed for this as well. With the Pinnacle trim, we do have the Uconnect Theater in the back seats. Chrysler's added a couple new games to that, and there will be more games being added to it. So if you have kids and they want to be able to play something in the back, they've got a couple extra options on top of the Blu-ray player that's built into it. And Chrysler has also added a new 10-inch rear quarter subwoofer to the already 19-speaker Harman Kardon audio system on this. Keep in mind, if you go with the hybrid, it is a 20-speaker Harman Kardon audio system, but they've added that as well. Now, let's say you're not listening to music, you just want some silence. The interior road noise has been improved when it comes to this model year for the Pacifica. Chrysler says that they have reduced the wind noise with better door and glass seals, and also the road noise has improved by changing some of the specifications and how the vehicle was built. So a couple nice changes there. Again, we've got the changes on the inside, the tech features that have been updated, which are great. The final addition to this vehicle that we didn't see before is now power folding mirrors. They do that automatically. You can set it up through the Uconnect system or push the button on the driver's side here. So it's great. These are awesome features to have in this vehicle on top of an already really good minivan. It shows that Chrysler is committed to making minivans still. And this is really the year for them. I mean, we've liked the Pacifica before, but now there is some serious competition with a new vehicle in this segment, the replacement for the Kia Sedona, the new Carnival, which looks absolutely fantastic from the photos that I've seen, and we are hoping to get that very soon. But back to the Pacifica, it's time for us to take it on the road. We'll hit the road, see how this vehicle performs, handles, and drives, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the 2021 Chrysler Pacifica Pinnacle. I've been a very bad boy. I forgot to mention the most important feature when it comes to the new 2021 Chrysler Pacifica Pinnacle, and it is the second row pillows. They are really nice. I mean, how many cars can you buy that come with little pillows, let alone ones that are under, like, you know, $250,000? So the second row there is really good. The only, complaint, the only thing that I would suggest if Chrysler wants to kind of continue to put this upscale is to have ventilated seats back there. That's one of the features that we don't usually find, and it's something that some of the mid-size crossovers are starting to offer. And if you really are using this for people hauling, doesn't need to be kids, but people in general probably want to have ventilated seats back there. So that would be my one suggestion. If they can add that, I mean, the leather seats are already perforated, just kind of add the hardware and everything in, should be good. I can understand it's a little difficult given the fact that those are stow and go seats, but maybe there's a way to do it. Maybe there's a way to have the hardware in there and work with the way that Chrysler has this vehicle set up. But that's pretty much the only thing that this thing is missing, and maybe a head-up display. That would be kind of nice too, especially at this price point. Yeah, $68,000 Canadian. It's a bit of a tough pill to swallow, so I don't know how many people are going to be looking at the top-end trim. If you're planning on buying this for like 10 years, absolutely, I could see it being a vehicle that you'd want to go for the top end with, because you're going to be holding on to it, you want to have all the features. But I still think that a lot of people are going to be looking at the more affordable trims, but still, I think a HUD would be nice. Get a couple extra features in there. I know that this is on the pricier side, but they do offer a lot now, and with the all-wheel drive, it does stand out as a vehicle that gives you quite a bit of options with this minivan. Now, what can I tell you about it? I mean, the ride and drive and everything is pretty much what we expected and what we've driven before. The interior road noise does feel a little bit better than it was on the previous versions that we've driven, so it is nice to have just a slightly nicer interior. Again, you're paying the price, you want to have that extra level of comfort, extra level of luxury when it comes to it. Now, the Pentastar V6, we see this everywhere. They haven't changed that. It's got the same power numbers that we've driven before, so that's no change there. It still uses Chrysler's 9-speed automatic transmission, so there's no changes just because it's all-wheel drive. Now, they say that, pretty much off the line, you're always going to be using all-wheel drive, and then it will detect whether or not you should be using it if the weather is rough. The all-wheel drive system will engage. So for the most part, you should see decent fuel numbers. We did have our numbers at the beginning, so you can see how that was, and compared to how we drove with the original Chrysler Pacifica that we did, not the hybrid. Obviously, the numbers for that are quite a bit different, but you'll have seen the comparison of our fuel economy, so you don't lose too much going with the all-wheel drive version. In the States, you have no choice if you go with the Pinnacle, and I believe also the Limited as well is all-wheel drive only, but this is a Canadian-built vehicle. It's an actual vehicle built in Canada, making it a domestic vehicle for us, so perhaps that's why we have a little bit more option. There's a little bit more wiggle room with what you want out of your vehicle, because they're just coming from Ontario. But I really do like this. That's why I enjoy driving the Pacifica. It's why I'm so excited that there's stuff going on in the minivan segment. It's not just the Pacifica that's got an update. As I mentioned, the Kia Carnival, which is new, the replacement for the Sedona, looks really good. And it doesn't have all the features that this does. It doesn't have all-wheel drive either. But the fact is you're getting some competition in this segment, which it really needs. I'd be very sad if the minivan in general just died out in North America. There's still a lot of need for a vehicle like this that's lower to the ground, has better entry and exit, because I gotta say it's very easy to get into this for my daughter. Some of the mid-size crossovers, a little tough for her to get up to. She's 7 years old, but she is tall, so I can imagine younger kids, it's difficult to get into those vehicles. So this gives you that flexibility, lots of options. And again, the way that this vehicle can be configured, not so much at the top end trim, you get everything, but because there's so much choice, no matter which trim you go with, there's a lot of good options here, and that's ultimately why I like driving this. Excellent job to Chrysler for coming out with an update on this. Not a big surprise. I mean, they needed to do something with the Pacifica, and I'm really happy with the update. There's, again, nothing really to complain about. I'm excited to see how this will continue on, how the Chrysler brand will evolve, if this will maybe be sort of the beginning of a new resurgence for the brand. But I have to say that if you are in the market for a minivan, this gives you something else to consider. You don't have to settle for a crossover. You can finally look at something that, I know, still a bit of a dirty word, minivan, but I'm telling you right now, if you're in the market for something that has flexibility, this is the way to go.